Welcome to this next installment of SurveyCTO's webinar series. In this installment, the focus will be updating a household roster over time. First, before getting started, I'll answer the question, why SurveyCTO, for anyone who is not familiar. SurveyCTO has powerful form design features that lend themselves to flexible and scalable deployment in any data collection setting. The result is robust form designs, facilitated partly through features for testing form designs to help you with quality control. Innumerable complex form designs and workflows are possible as necessary. Quality and trust are design principles of the product with sophisticated quality control functionality, enabling review and correction of data, and automated statistical quality checks. Powerful real-time data monitoring and visualization tools are built in, while facilitating data publishing to help you take advantage of the features of outside systems. Data protection is also a key design principle, with multiple layers of security built in, including public-private key encryption, single sign-on, and restricted access through the use of custom user roles through permissions within teams. SurveyCTO also offers GDPR-compliant hosting. The platform is supported by a team of experts who are constantly improving a growing body of learning materials aimed at helping you succeed, including a self-paced training course. So the following is the executive summary of this webinar. The following material will be covered. We will look at preloading a roster of baseline household members into a form, confirming the current household membership from preloaded records, collecting a roster of new household members, if any, combining and displaying new and old members inside one unified choice list, asking follow-up questions of confirmed members and new members. So just to help you with the webinar as well, it will be structured as follows. We will first review the questionnaire and the sample form design. We will do a quick review of the design and test it. We will review the form design logic in overview. We will also have a look at some of the required functions for achieving this form design. And then we will do a detailed review of the form design as necessary. So here's our questionnaire, very short and sweet. There is an ID field which stores the ID value of a baseline household member. This is essential for the preloading that we will do. There is a field called old list, which looks to confirm the household members from the baseline, essentially confirming that each member is still a member of the household. There is a field called new N, which will record how many new members there are at this new collection point, and we'll limit that to 6 members in this example. Then depending on how many new members, there is a text field that repeats, collecting the names of new members. Now, from the combined list of confirmed members in old list and the names stored in the name field, we will look to select a household head from that combined list. Then on, there is another repeated field where we will ask whether each member, whether baseline or newly collected member, currently attends school. So that's our questionnaire. Let's take a look at the form design. So I'll be moving a bit between the presentation and the spreadsheet version of the form design. It will be possible for you to download your own copy deploy that on your own SurveyCTO server and explore that in the online form designer if that's the environment that you prefer. But the spreadsheet form design template just offers a greater information overview. So we'll have a look at that together. So I'm not going to be discussing features of the design in detail. This is just a quick overview. We'll have some slide discussions based on the expressions and features that you see in the design, and we'll try and link that back to the spreadsheet design. So as before, there is an ID field. This happens to be an integer field. I'm constraining this to only allow a valid ID number just for this example. So also note that I've anchored columns A and B, so as I scroll across, these will travel with us. So I'm scrolling across just to show you the expressions in these calculate fields. These are pull data function or expressions that use the pull data function. We will discuss this in detail, so you should have a good understanding of how preloading works. But these fields look to return data from the attached preload source. Our preload source happens to be named preload. I've added an additional sheet to this form design called preload, but this is not effective from the perspective of the form design. You would still need to correctly attach preload data. It's just convenient to have this additional sheet in the design itself. But here are our IDs. We have names of baseline members, and we also have the number of baseline members recorded at this stage in a field by the name of N. So you can see that ID 1 has 6 different names and the value is 6. ID 2 has 3 different names and the N value is 3. That's all we need to see for now. So here we have our old list field, which is a select multiple field. And we're asking the respondent to confirm the continued presence of baseline household members. Now, this field happens to have a choice filter expression, which filters down the roster choice list down to the appropriate choices. Now, let's take a look at that choice list quickly. So, the appropriate choices are the first half of this combined choice list. Notice that the labels here are returning values from fields named pull name 1 through pull name 6. These are these calculate fields, which are returning the names of baseline members. Notice also that the filter values are equal to the choice list values. That is crucial in this form design. But the combination of these filter values and this choice filter expression means that only the baseline members that were preloaded appear in the old list choice list. Don't worry if you don't understand that choice filter expression just yet. I will discuss it in more detail. The new N integer field asks how many new members are there. This is used to populate the repeat count of the roster repeat group. And the name field happens to repeat inside that repeat group. Now, in order to name the rest of the choices in our combined roster, I needed to call out these name fields into standalone fields, which is what's happening in this set of calculate fields named roster name 1 through roster name 6. I'm using the indexed repeat function to call out each instance of the name field up to 6 names. So notice roster name 1 through 6. If I show you the choice list again, here you can see roster name 1 through 6. So this second half of the choice list is effectively reserved for displaying potential newly collected members of the roster at this midline or end line point. The next field is the head field, which asks the user to select the household head from the combined list of members. Crucial here is this choice filter expression. This choice filter expression reduces the list that is shown down to the item selected in the old list, and it, in addition, filters down the range of new members down to only those collected rather than the full potential list of new members. If this looks long and complicated and scary, don't worry, we're going to discuss this in detail. This is just a quick overview. So following the head field, we have a combined question repeat group. The combined question repeat group has a single field in which we ask, does calcname attend school? So the magic really here is in this calcname expression. And as you can see, it's awfully long. There's a lot going on here. But we will break this down. But essentially what calcname does is, depending on the position or index value inside this repeat group, it will return either a confirmed baseline member from the old list, and failing that, it will return in sequence new member names from the roster repeat group. So that's the object here. We will break this down. The combined question repeat group repeats as many times as there are confirmed old list members and new members. So that's our very quick overview of the form design. If that was a little too quick for you, again, don't worry. We will return to it. So back to a few slides just to build up some theory so we can follow this. So in terms of our design overview, here's an outline of the design logic. The form stores an ID value for preloading. A preloaded list of baseline household members are dynamically displayed in a choice list used to confirm who is still a member. The names of new members since the baseline are collected in a repeated text field. The combined list of old and new members are displayed, filtered down to those who are present. This list can be used to make selections. It's also possible to dynamically pass new and old members through the same repeat group to ask the same set of questions of both lists or categories of household member. So we are going to look at covering the following content, looking at our form design ingredients. I'll go over preloading, repeat groups, the use of hidden calculate fields, and the functions that we'll use inside, dynamic labeling of choices, and most importantly in this design, choice filtering, which is crucial to achieving this design. The first feature to understand in the design is preloading, which facilitates the pre-population of a form with pre-existing data. You'll store data in CSV format, which you can directly attach to a form design when you deploy it, or upload it to a server dataset, which is in turn attached to the form. On my server, I've done the latter, rather using a server dataset. In the form design, you'll capture a unique ID, which is used in pull data expressions and calculate fields to return values from that attached data source. So this is the syntax of the pull data function. And it takes 4 arguments, or instructions, if you will. The first is the source, which is the name of the attached data source. This would be the name of the CSV file up to the full stop or period before the file extension, or the ID of the server dataset. The second parameter or argument is the col name or column name, which is the name of the column in the source from which you want to return a value. The third is lookup col name or lookup column name. This is the column for looking up the row you want with the help of the lookup val, which should contain only unique values. And the lookup val or lookup value, which is used to find matches inside the lookup col name. This is typically a dynamically returned value stored inside a field. So let's look at some real syntax here, or some non-notional syntax. The source here in this case, inside our form design, is named preload. That happens to be the name of my attached server data set in this case. The col name or column name is name1, where the first baseline member's name is stored inside the preload source. The lookup col name is named ID key, which is also located inside preload. And lastly, the lookup val or lookup value is returned dynamically from the ID field inside the form design. Note that non-dynamic arguments or parameters in the pull data syntax are enclosed in single quotes. This signifies that they are strings. So that'll become relevant just now in our discussion. Here is an example of preloading logic using this sample form. In this case, the value in the name3 column in the source, named preload, is being returned when the lookup value, which is 3 in this case, is equal to the value in ID key. I hope you can see the overlap with the name3 column here with the ID key value 3. That's all that's happening behind the scenes if you happened to enter the ID value 3 into the ID field. So that's preloading. I hope you have a better sense than you had before of how preloading works. We'll discuss a few other functions in a more cursory manner. First, the if function. If is a logical function. It tests a condition which you can see before the first comma in the syntax. Field equals 1. If the condition evaluates as true, 1 result is returned after the first comma. And you can see that we're returning a value here from a field named true result. If the condition evaluates as false, another result is returned after the second comma in the syntax. And you can see that is a value stored in a field named false result in this example. Index is a function for use inside repeat groups only. It returns the index number, which is the value 1 the first time fields are repeated inside the repeat group, 2 the second time fields are repeated, and 3 the third time, and so forth. It just keeps on counting inside a repeat group. Indexed repeat is a function for returning a specific instance of a repeated field when outside the same repeat group. So it's not required for returning a value if you happen to be returning it from inside the same repeat group, only from outside. This is required because repeated fields store a value per repeat instance. And without an instruction on which value from which repeat instance you want, SurveyCTO will experience an error. So in this first example, the field named repeated field, which is located inside a repeat group, named repeat group, is being returned, and it's being called dynamically based on the value returned by index. In our second example here, the indexed repeat function is doing something very similar. The repeated field, named repeated field, located inside repeat group, which is a repeat group, is returning the first instance of this field. So the value in the very first repetition inside this repeat group. Okay, so just a few more functions to discuss before we can see what some of the longer functions in this form design do together. First, the selected@at function is a function that returns values from space-separated lists of values stored in fields. It does this by naming values by position, and that position numbering starts from 0 rather than 1 when you're using selected@. So in the example that that follows in the second sub-bullet point below, if the position value were 0, you would return the value 4. If the position value happened to be 1, you would return the value 7. And if the position number were 2, you would return the value 10 from this list of the values 4, 7, and 10. So that'll be crucial to understanding the last example with the combined repeat group. Count selected counts the number of selections in a select multiple field or the number of values in a space-separated value list. So for example, if 3 selections are made in a select multiple field, it would return the value 3. Concat is SurveyCTO's function to concatenate values into a string. You're probably familiar with the concatenate function from Excel or Google Sheets. Concat has many applications in SurveyCTO. In the context of this sample form and use case, concat is used to dynamically construct the names of col names or column names used inside a pull data expression. If you recall, the col name in pull data takes a string value. So here in this particular sample form, the string value name would be concatenated onto the value returned by index. So this would, in the first instance, produce the column name name1 and the column name name2 in the second instance, and so on. So in this way, we'll be able to use pull data to pass through the selections in the old list and return those name values from attached preload data. So let's discuss the form design's application a little bit to each step along the way. The following needs to be in place in this design. So the names of baseline members need to be stored inside the form. We've seen this already in the design. These baseline members are preloaded into the form design in a series of calculate fields. The baseline member names need to be displayed in a choice list in the design. We had a look at that as well. The choices in the choice list need to be given unique filter values of baseline members, equal to the choice values. Because there could be fewer than the highest possible number of baseline members, you need to cater for the maximum choice list size. This is partly because a calculate field per dynamically named choice is required in the design. The trick then is to filter the choice list down to the actual size recorded in the baseline using the choice filter expression. That is why preloading the n value into the pull n field in the design is so important and useful. So for this reason, the choice filter expression in the design includes pull n is greater than or equal to filter. Also, because a single choice list for new and old members is being used, the choice filter expression needs to filter out new members at this stage. This is achieved by including filter is greater than 0 in the choice filter expression in the old list field. This works because new members have negative ranges of filter values. So let's connect this slide to the design, just so we can come to a stronger understanding of this. So on the slide, I just discussed preloading, which is happening inside these fields, from pull n all the way to pull name. Pull n is returning the household's roster size from the baseline, and these names from the baseline are being stored here. Our baseline names are being stored up until this point, up until the 6th choice, because in this demonstration, we only had up to 6 baseline members. And here we have the filter values for the baseline members. 1 to 6 equal to the choice values of 1 through 6 as well. So let's take a look at the choice filter again. So remember that the value stored in pull n is returned and used inside the choice filter expression by calling it with the dollar sign and curly brackets in this way. So that preloaded n value sits here. So then the value inside pull n must be greater than or equal to filter, and filter must be greater than or 0. So let's look at a concrete example. Let's say that ID2 was entered. Well, ID2 corresponds with an n value of 3. That means that pull n stores 3. So in other words, the upper bound for this filtering is the filter is less than or equal to 3, or rather 3 is greater than or equal to filter. So going back to our choice list, this means that the upper bound means that the filter values are equal to and less than 3 are included. But the second part of the choice filter here says that the filter must be greater than 0. Greater than 0 excludes this negative range. So this is what's happening to facilitate the presentation of only existing baseline members and excluding the spaces in the choice list for new members, and excluding any spots in the roster which happen to be for potential baseline members, but which don't apply in practice to this particular preloaded household. Okay, so I hope that that's clear enough. We'll go back to our presentation just for now. So we've confirmed our baseline members. Now we need a repeat group to capture new potential members. The first repeat group in the design does this with a repeat count set to the number of times equal to the value stored in new n. So the roster, a repeat group, could just as easily have had an unlimited repeat count with no value specified there. This is just an assumption of my design here, but you don't necessarily need to do that. The roster repeat group also happens to have relevance, which is index is less than or equal to new n. This is also not essential to the design, but it is a highly recommendable addendum to any repeat count that is populated through a reference to a value stored in a field. So when that value is revised down, you might expect that the number of repeat instances inside the repeat group would automatically reduce, but this is not the case. It won't automatically happen due to SurveyCTO's non-destructive data design. What you can, however, do is make those unwanted repetitions not relevant through this particular relevance expression. So what happens then if new n is revised down and you happen to arrive in a repeat instance where the index value is in fact greater than new n, that repeat instance simply will not be relevant. So problem solved. The name field is repeated inside the group and also happens to display the index value inside the label to help you keep track of the collection of new members, but that is not required in the design at all. So new members. Continuing to deal with new members of the household as before, with the preloaded baseline members, you must plan for the maximum number of possible new members inside the choice list. Also, to label the part of the combined choice list that deals with new members, you must store those member names in calculate fields. This is achieved with indexed repeat expressions to statically call each new potential member's name from their repeat group position. The new member names extend the roster choice list, but with the important difference that these choices have an alternative negative filter value range. In order to present the full list of confirmed members along with new members, you need to use a choice filter expression. Filter down to the confirmed members from the baseline using the selected old list filter part of the choice list expression. This will include only the choices with filter values that match the selections made in the old list field. Otherwise, you will only want to include new members that exist, not every potential member. To do this, you can include a range of values. The top of the range being filter is less than 0, and the bottom of the range being filter is greater than or equal to 0 minus new n, or the value stored in new n. Remember that new n stores the number of new members. So for example, if there happen to be only 2 new members, 0 minus new n is equal to -2 or -2. And if you want to have a look at the choice list, which we'll do now, you'll see that greater than or equal to -2 would include only 2 of 6 potential new members. So in practice, we have two different choice filter ranges included in the same choice filter expression, including a negative range of choice filter values for new members. So let's look again at the design just to connect these concepts. Right, so as before, members are collected inside indexed repeat calculate fields. The first name value is stored inside this field. The sixth name value is stored inside this final roster name field. These values are dynamically returned in the label property of these last 6 choices. And these last 6 choices have filter values of -1 through -6, not equal to their choice value inside the choice list. But that's fine, that's by design. So the trick now is combining the confirmed old list members with these new members, which we can achieve here in this choice filter expression. So as before, in my discussion on the slide, the selected function generally addresses space-separated value lists. It's also a logical function, so it's either true or not. So wherever it is true that the filter values fall inside or are amongst the values inside old list, choices with those filter values will appear. Now, what's really crucial also inside this choice filter expression is the use of the OR operator. The OR operator means that choice list items which match the conditions on either side of OR will be included. So choice list items where this is true will be included. And in addition, choice filter values that match this collective condition will also be included. But you must use OR and will not function in the same way. Both will be required of every single choice, and that will not be possible. So let's discuss the second part of this. So firstly, we're restricting the top range, numerically speaking, of those returned items, which are the new members. With this part of the expression, filter is less than 0. Going back to the choice list, these are all less than 0. Now, here's where things are a little more interesting. Let's assume, as on the slide, that there are 2 new members. So this term evaluates to -2. So in other words, the filter will be greater than or equal to -2. So what's greater than or equal to -2? -2 and -1 only. So we've constrained our range only to these. But if new n happened to be -4, then it would be greater than -4 and less than 0. So I hope that's clear enough in terms of what's going on inside this expression. Let's head back to our slides just for now. Okay, the last part of this sample form is a combined repeat group roster for follow-up questions on all confirmed baseline members and all new members. The names of confirmed baseline members and new members will be dynamically called into the combined question repeat group, starting with the baseline members, following with the new members. But how will we achieve this? Well, this can be done dynamically using index. Remember, index returns the index number based on the position inside the repeat group, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Similar to how the choice list expression I discussed deals with two different cases depending on the position or index value of the roster, a calculate expression could return confirmed baseline members or new member names, depending. The choice list values representing which baseline members were confirmed is stored inside the old list field. Old list stores a space-separated value list of these selections, which you can pick from and select using the selected@. function. And you can do that dynamically using index, which is adjusted down to 0 to begin at position 1, or the first position, to satisfy selected@'s position numbering convention. On top of that, the returned value from old list is concatenated to the front of the string name to dynamically construct which preload column per repeat instance is returned. So I've tried to highlight this in this slide with different colors for parts of the expression. You can see that selected@ sitting inside concat has index -1 as the position number. Again, to start from 0, and that value will change depending on which repetition you are in inside combined question. Then around that, concat sits in the second position, or the second argument position for pull data, where the column name goes. And that's adding name to whichever value is returned by this combination of selected@ and index. So that's crucial to understanding what's going on there. But what about the new members? So new members can also be called out from the roster repeat group, but in this design, we start with confirmed old members and only want to start asking about new members after finishing with old members. The thing to do is to, again, adjust the index value downward. In this case, the index is adjusted down by the number of selections made inside old list. So let's discuss some example. For ID2, there are 3 baseline members. Let's say that 2 baseline members are selected, confirming their continued presence in the household. That means that the number of selections stored by count selected in old list is only 2. This also means that the last argument of indexed repeat here has a value of -1 or -1 in the first instance of the combined question repeat group, which makes no sense because there is no such thing as an index of -1. Similarly, in the second instance of this repeat group, it will have an index value of 0, again, because we're subtracting the value returned by count selected here from index. And there also is no index value of 0. Index starts at 1. So that also makes no sense. However, in the third instance of a repeat group, just in time for the first new member, the index value has an adjusted value of 1. Exactly right for calling the first new roster member's name inside the instance from the first instance of the name field from the roster repeat group. So again, there's a lot going on here. I think it helps to rather look at these functions here in isolation from the form. But the question still is, how do we put this together? We talked about 2 circumstances. the circumstance under which we want to return baseline members, and the circumstance that we want to return new members. We don't want to do both. So we'll combine these two expressions using an if expression. Remember that if is a logical expression returning one result if the condition is true and another result otherwise. We just need to swap in our expression from the last slides into our if expression. And I've tried to color code this on this slide to show you what's going on. So our condition here is that index is less than or equal to the number of selections in the old list. That will be true until the point that there are no more confirmed baseline members, right until the point that it is time to start asking follow-up questions about new members. So hopefully you can see where these have slotted in. The blue is our condition. Index is less than or equal to the count of selections in old list. Otherwise, we have the pull data function, which returns only the confirmed new members directly from the preload source. And as soon as this condition is no longer true, in whichever repeat instance that is, it will start returning new members if new members exist. So that is what's going on inside that last repeat group. Just a little more on that last repeat group. The repeat group has a repeat count that is calculated. It repeats the number of times equal to the confirmed baseline members in old list plus new members. The number of confirmed baseline members is counted inside old list using count selected. And the number of new members is easy to get because that's stored inside the new member field. And from there, using simple addition, you can just add these two values together. So I realize also that in our presentation, we hadn't actually tested the form design. So let me walk you through a test of what we did. So I happen to have loaded up the form design in the test view. So I'll open up the form inspector, which is SurveyCTO's feature for helping you test a form design. So you can see what's happening in the background, including fields that are being skipped, and you can also investigate what's happening in the current state of the field that's on screen. So I'll click Next. Here you can see the constraints, all the metadata fields that are being skipped. We'll choose ID 2 in this case. Here we have 3 members from the baseline. Let's say only Margaret and Anne are still current members, but Susan is no longer a member of this household. So how many new members are there? I could report 0. Perhaps the household hasn't gained any new members, but I'll answer 2. So perhaps our new members are Mark and Thomas. So here we can see our combined list. Remember, one of the baseline members was not confirmed. I believe it was Susan. So that's no longer appearing. But now we're presenting a combined list. But also, as you'll recall from the choice list, there are actually 12 choices, but 8 of those are being filtered out due to the programming. So perhaps Mark married into the household and is now the formal household head. Now, in our next section, we'll ask follow-up questions about each old member and each new member. So perhaps Margaret is still in attendance at school. Anne isn't, Mark isn't, and Thomas is. And we've passed through the whole form design, but importantly in that last section, this giant expression which we explored in the design, it did its job. It returned preloaded baseline members when we needed them in a combined repeat group roster, and it returned new members from a list of new household members recorded inside a new repeat group. So we've reached the close of our webinar content at this stage.